Hello and welcome to Sunday Chat for the 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, which happens to be September 16th. I have with me my collected works of Shakespeare, very worn and yellowed over time, several decades you might say. There's a single quotation that I want to look at for this 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, which I feel fits our theme of the cross quite well. As an opposite to it, you might say. And so the quotation is a reading that Malvolio shares with us. He's reading a letter to us, and these are the words. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Again, some people are born great, some achieve greatness, and others have greatness thrust upon them. And so the reason I thought about this particular quotation is because when I look at the cross, there are those crosses that we are born into. There are those crosses which we achieve or we bring upon ourselves. And then there are those crosses which others impose on us. And so just like these three categories of greatness, so we have three categories of the cross. And I would like to distinguish between the two, as I believe this distinction is important for our own unique spiritual journeys, as well as for the institutional church. So let's begin with the first category. Some people are born great, some people are born into a particular kind of cross. And when I think about this cross, this is tough because sometimes people are born with fewer advantages than others, and in fact many more disadvantages. Somebody might be born with very impaired health, whether it's with a disability, a mental disability, a physical disability, whether it's with other circumstances which are really hard. Somebody might be born into extreme poverty, or somebody might be born into a war zone, or somebody may be born into a house where there is no love, or where the parents are addicts of some kind, or alcohol is more available than milk. So we have then a category of the cross which has nothing to do with us as individuals. We didn't choose this particular cross, but it's what life gives us. You could say, to use another cliche, it's the cards that we're dealt in life. And we can learn from this cross and, if possible, transcend it. But this is not a cross we have brought on ourselves. We have no power over this cross. For some people, the impact of this cross will last a lifetime. For others, as they grow older, they may outgrow some of the pain of this particular cross. But it is different than the other two categories. So I'd like to move from the first category to the third category. I'm deliberately bypassing category number 2, which is a little bit more complicated. So category number 3 is the category parallel to some people have greatness thrust upon them. Well, some people have crosses thrust upon them too, or imposed upon them. And these are the kinds of crosses that may come later in life through no fault of the one who has to carry this particular cross. It may be that the person who ends up with a particular cross has it thrust upon him or her by an abusive partner or somebody abusive in the workplace. It may be some form of terrible injustice that happens. Take, for example, somebody wrongfully imprisoned, blamed for a crime that he or she didn't commit. Or take, for example, somebody who ends up in an accident because of a drunk driver. These are crosses that are thrust upon us, just like greatness is thrust upon us in some cases. So the cross can be thrust or imposed upon us through no fault of our own. And that brings us to the third category, where we do have something to say about this particular kind of cross. And actually, this kind of cross is the one we have no option but to pick up and carry, because we ourselves have created it. We have created this second category of cross by our own choices or bad choices, by our own bad behaviors, our own attitudes, you might say. And so if somebody decides to take a selfie on the edge of the Grand Canyon and takes a tumble, that is not a cross that came from out of the blue. It's a cross that that person imposed upon himself or herself. Or if somebody invests in a company that, it's a poor investment, and the investor does not do any homework, then the outcome is not going to be good, most likely, and the person, the investor, has to face the consequences of not doing the research that was required. Or somebody goes to a job interview for a position they really want, and they lie about something on their resume, whether it has to be where they went to school or a particular credential they have. And so then instead of getting the job, they get blacklisted by the company they want to work for. Or take a student plagiarizing a paper. I've had this happen so often, where a student will hand in work that either they've bought from somebody else or stolen from somebody else or copied right off the internet. And then they have to face the big F. And the way I put this is that I did not give them the F. They decided they needed the F themselves. They earned their own F. That I only fail people who fail themselves. So it is with the cross. This kind of cross that we create manifests in our life over and over again. And what's interesting is that it really manifests until we get the message. It's just like a dream. Sometimes we have recurring dreams, and people want to know, well, why does this dream keep on coming back? And my answer is always, well, the dream keeps on coming until we get the message. And so too then with the kinds of crosses we deal with. Sometimes people have recurring crosses of working in terrible environments, and over again they find themselves working for type A driven bosses who expect workers to be on the premises from 7 in the morning till midnight, and there's no relief and no mercy. Or it may be that somebody keeps on having one bad relationship after another. Well, until that person learns the lesson, that pattern is going to repeat itself. And so sometimes the crosses we carry keep on resurfacing in our lives until we get the message. So then these crosses are ones that we do need to pay attention to. They have something to teach us. We need to study the cross that comes in our lives, especially the ones that repeat themselves. We need to ask ourselves to what extent we're responsible for these crosses. Did we create them? If they're not crosses we were born into, and if they're not crosses as others thrust upon us, then the only option is that these are ones we created ourselves. And so we need to figure out how we did this, whom we might have hurt along the way, how we might make amends, how we can change in the future, and then the wonderful grace that can happen when we turn our lives around. And so this cross then of our own making, which is seemingly a disaster, seemingly puts an end to our dreams, can be a source of grace and transformation. And that's exciting news. At the moment, the institutional church is dealing with a cross of this kind. It's not a cross the church was born into. It's not a cross that was thrust upon the church, but rather it's a cross of abuse that has happened because the church allowed it to happen, because the faithful put the clergy on a pedestal and didn't ask the clergy to be accountable. It's because the bishops and the monsignors and the cardinals and even the popes have not held erring clergy to be accountable. And then, of course, we have the culture of silence that has allowed this sexual abuse scandal to continue. So that is the cross that we're now facing. It's big, it's huge, and it's ugly. And we can ignore it, to our own peril. We can pretend it happened elsewhere to our own peril. But if we together collectively pick it up and try and deal with it, then grace is a possibility. And this is what I believe we must do. That everybody, not just the survivors of the abuse, not just those who let it happen, not just the shocked faithful, but everybody, no matter what our station in life, we need to examine this cross, ask ourselves how it became what it did, and now how we're going to basically turn it from a terrible crisis into a source of giftedness and life. Because transformation is possible. That's the Paschal mystery. That's what we believe as Christians, that the tomb can become the place of resurrection, that the cross can become a symbol of salvation, that even the worst things that can happen can be turned around with God's grace and become possibility. And so, rather than focus on our own particular crosses only, we, as members of the church, need to face this ugly big cross and see what we might do to lighten the load for our brothers and sisters, especially the survivors of sexual abuse, and how we might ourselves offer our gifts to the institution, that the church can be reformed, and we along with it, reformed and then become more in alignment with the teachings of Jesus. So terrible as this moment in history is, it is a moment of possibility. And at this moment of possibility, I hope you will join with me in trying to do what we can to bring about change and to bring about transformation and to bring about possibility, so that this kind of scandal will never happen in the future. And so as a church, we can move into a period of really being the kingdom of God. And this, my friends plural, is my reflection on greatness, that which we are born into, that which we achieve, and that which is thrust upon us, and my reflection upon the cross, and again, that which we are born into, that which we bring about ourselves, and that which is thrust upon us. And so I will see you again a week from now, and for now, goodbye from Sunday Chat.